Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a while since we last had our live session, probably like over a week. And I'm glad to be back. And for those who will be watching from different time zones or will watch the replay, good evening or good morning, wherever you are. My name is Mary Len. I am the founder and CEO of Customized Training Solutions Private Limited, or CTS, and we are passionate about helping leaders and organizations who are continuous learners and action takers to transform and thrive in all aspects by co creating customized programs with our world class resources. We have served over 3,000 leaders from over 30 countries in different industries, and that includes Petronas, Sony Mobile, PruLife UK, Ayala Group, Chevron, Tencent, Jollibee Corporation, Foods Corporation, and Shell, to name a few. Experts say that the pandemic will last for the next 3 to 5 years. This is why we are organizing several interventions, including this interview, to help leaders who don't know how to stay relevant and adapt to the new normal, those who find it stressful to lead and ensure performance of a remote team, and for those who are actually afraid that they can't keep their team and business in this interesting times, right? So to be able to stay relevant and continue to lead effectively in any situation, we are glad that you are here or you can join us today. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our leader for today. Jim Khong focuses on helping Malaysian SMEs to fulfill strategic aspiration of owner CEO. He helps by creating a roadmap that will consider all aspects of organizations, including required changes to the system, processes, and people, as well as the existing planned organization capabilities and business plans. As one of the few GST consultants in Malaysia with hands-on GST experience in the UK, Jim assists smaller listed companies or larger SMEs by reviewing the operations of the company for how GST impacts the company and propose solutions and train staff as well in the solutions. So without so much further ado, I'd like to bring in Jim.
Hi, Marilyn.
Jim, good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm fine. It's heat wave in Malaysia now.
Mhm. Wow, that's good to hear. So anyway, let's jump into the question. So basically, the first three questions is really more for us to understand from which perspective are you coming from, and then the 3 to 6 question, it will be, I would say, the meaty or juicy part of our conversation, and the last two will be your opportunity to answer Miss Universe questions. So without so much further ado, I'd like to start by understanding like where are you coming from in terms of your leadership experience, probably your preferred leadership style or styles, and like what's your experiences like in that space, from your corporate, working with corporate or being a corporate leader yourself, and if you have like influencers that you'd like to share with us.
Right. What is leadership? Um, what leadership style it is?
Mm-hmm. And your
I am
experience in terms of leadership as well.
there. I've been fortunate to have met with many leaders in my time. Okay, in
Mm-hmm.
my career, and I've been uh, coached, mentored by good people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wouldn't want be able to list them all down today, but one that I'm always reminded of was my boss in PricewaterhouseCoopers. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
he's a very smart guy, but he's not the most knowledgeable person in the team, and he knows that. And when he goes for a meeting with a client, he always brings along a whole load of people. Okay, and he made it very clear to us: you guys are my insurance. If I get lost anywhere, you have every right to just step in at any time and just bail me out. This was a man with humility. He knows where his limitations are.
Mm-hmm.
And so he makes sure that we are there to um, manage his limitations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one lesson of leadership that I learned from him. Okay, that
Mm-hmm.
as a professional, I choose the jobs that best suit my strength, and I choose the team that best manage my weaknesses.
Wow.
Okay,
That's really
something to
great.
think about.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
So hopefully.
I've learned, uh, I've learned so much from him in the sense that I was just talking to somebody earlier today about about my experience with him. And one of the things that he does is that when he goes in for a meeting with a client at a client's place, we were going something like 15, 20 minutes earlier, always.
Mm-hmm.
And then he will then sort out, okay, you sit here and you sit there and you sit here. Now I'm going to be sitting here. The
Mm-hmm.
client, so that when the client comes in, the psychology is that the client sits in that space, okay,
Mm-hmm.
which you have already, you know, occupied in such a way where the client was in that space. And the reason why he wanted it that way is so that when the client were to answer a question that, so you ask a question and the client answer, he wants to be in the right angle to be
Mm-hmm.
able to see so and so's reaction when the
Mm-hmm.
first answer. You know, this was
Yes.
a guy who knows people. And I think that is what leadership really is all about in today's world.
Mm-hmm.
It's about people.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that experience with us, and I hope I've actually like summarized what you shared with us by the sentence below, which is learning from that leader who knows his strength or limitations as well, and knows how to leverage with his team, and again full of humility. And again, like what you've said, leadership is really about people, right? And so, having said that, based on your experience and what you've shared with us, if you were to define leadership, what is leadership for you then?
Leadership is about bringing people to where they may or may not want to go.
Mm-hmm.
They may or may not intend to go. Okay. Sometimes we have got people who it's difficult to persuade them,
Mm-hmm.
but good leaders are able to persuade them. Sometimes
Yeah.
people end up, need to go somewhere, need to be somewhere else, but may not want to be there. The leader is the one who brings them there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to lead people who are willing to follow you. It's harder
Yeah.
to lead people who are reluctant to join you.
Wow, that's really beautiful. And again, it's all about people. It's about, bringing um that strength, that limitations, and leveraging on that on people. Because sometimes, like, when we are in some position, we don't really get to see that. But real leaders really get to see like our potential and how we can actually even level up, right? And so I appreciate that definition of leadership. It's all about, again, bringing people to where they ought to be, or they may or may not want to go to, like what you've said, right? And like I mentioned during my introduction earlier, that a lot of leaders nowadays have been really either worried or stressed about how they can stay relevant and adapt to the new normal or next normal, whatever you want to call it. And also, like, because like what you've said, in Malaysia it's still locked down and all, and in other different countries as well. And yesterday we just finished our last day of a virtual program on cost engineering, and my trainer is actually from Netherlands, and he said, like, actually, I was surprised that there's a lot of people who has been vaccinated. The rate of vaccination is high, and yet like the cases are also increasing, and that's the same in Singapore, right? And so, having said that, I would like to lead my next question then on, how would you define and describe the next normal, knowing all this, situation currently?
Well, there are many things in the new normal. I mean, there are many,
Mm-hmm.
many aspects. And I don't think so. We have really thought through it all. We are
Mm-hmm.
just learning about it. We are
Yes.
just figuring out what is going on to sort of live. All right. Um, so there are a few things that I like to really touch on. I mean, this is not a whole of the new normal. It's just a
Yeah.
small, tiny part of the new normal. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there's a social aspect, there's a political aspect, there is
Mm-hmm.
the developmental aspects, and so on. But I just want to focus on just the management side of things. All
Mm-hmm.
right. One of the things that has been happening very interestingly is what they call the Great Resignation.
Mm-hmm.
And people are in America. People are resigning in great numbers. I mean, in the first quarter, the second quarter that we have figures for, in America alone, 11.4 million people resigned.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in August, it was up to 4 million just in the month of August alone. Okay. So that's in the third quarter. And this is all over the world. Microsoft had a survey that says, global workforces, something like 40% of the people are considering resigning.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also in, a few other surveys are saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And really, when you think about it, what has this pandemic done to workers? Now, before the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, it was just rah, 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 get things done, go and push, push, push. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was running on the adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
And when the lockdown happened, adrenaline shifted to a higher gear. Okay, because it was a new kind of situation. Everybody was stressed out. Everybody is trying to adapt. And the strange thing that happens is once people adapted, things just calmed down. Things just got quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And with that quiet, people start to think. They start to reflect.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and what has happened is that I think there are a few things that people have came to certain realization.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the family and work balance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is exceptionally relevant in places like America, Britain, and in the middle class of the emerging economies. Okay, I think the Europeans have got a much better work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what has happened is that you a lot of the HR practices all over the world. It really, really annoys me that they assume that the moment you walk through the front door of office, you are
Mm-hmm.
no longer a father or a mother or a husband or a wife. Okay, you're a professional.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and being a professional, you shouldn't bring your work, your personal problems into work. Okay, that's not professional at all. That is being
Mm-hmm.
very weak. You should leave it behind. And really, when I think about it, it just doesn't make sense. Who did these guys hire? Did they hire someone who is lobotomized, you know, brain that only have left the professional workspace person with all
Mm-hmm.
the personal and professional stuff all excised out? You know, we're not like that. We are a complete person. So when you hire somebody, you hire a father or a mother or a husband or a wife or a
Mm-hmm.
son or a daughter or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You cannot say, I just want to hire the person who's just going to do the work. And that is where a lot of the problem is. Okay? Um, the workspace is not integrated with our family. The family and the workspace are two totally different things. And that has become that clash, and all of us feel the tension that we've got to leave the family behind and pretend that we don't have any children or spouses and to enter the office. Okay, is that real? Is there a way that we can actually bring the workspace and the family space together? So what has happened during the pandemic is that people were comfortable working from home because they are working with their family. Now it's stressful, yes, but people then, I think a lot of people are looking and say, this is a stress I'm willing to take because
Mm-hmm.
I'm with the people that I love, all right? And so when the call comes in to go back to the office,
Mm-hmm.
people, because they value their family life, all right? They are looking at it and saying, do I want to go back to the office, leave behind the home where I'm working among people who love me, to go into the office to work with people who are couldn't care less?
Yes.
That's the first question. Okay. A second thing that is also very fundamental is again the survey. There was one very interesting survey by Line 8, and
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest that you can Google it and read it up. Why did people quit in this great resignation?
Mm-hmm.
What are the people looking for? And a recurring theme in this and in a lot of other articles that you read, and these articles are
Mm-hmm.
all preliminary, I have to stress that. These
Mm-hmm.
surveys are very preliminary. Nobody has done a full in-depth study on it. But the recurring theme that comes out again and again, people feel undervalued.
Mm-hmm.
And really, when you think about it, why do people feel undervalued? First of all, actually, let's go back to our college days. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I can still remember the first lesson in the economics class. There are four factors of production, and one
Mm-hmm.
of which was labor.
Mm-hmm.
Labor, us, we are a factor of production. That's what
Mm-hmm.
we are. We are a unit. We are a resource of production. We are human resources. We
Mm-hmm.
are a resource to produce something. We
Mm-hmm.
are not a person. Okay. Sometimes they call us human capital. So we are
Mm-hmm.
capital in which you invest money with the expectation of a return. If there's no
Mm-hmm.
return, you do a cut loss and get rid of the investment. That's
Mm-hmm.
what capital is. We are not people. And when you think about it, okay, the corporate life do not look at workers as people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's become a very fundamental issue. And it's a very strange thing, in that same college that's teaching me about this economics, they also taught me about Maslow hierarchy of needs. Okay. And what does Maslow hierarchy of needs say? That first you satisfy the physiological and the security needs, and then you move on to the social and the self-esteem needs. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And but the corporate world is stuck at the physiological and security needs only because the main thing that they feel is going to motivate us is money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you pay more salaries or you give benefits, and benefits is really a form of money in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that drives us. But what happens when that stops driving us? Well, they give us more money. Or they and interesting thing is that they call it compensation,
Mm-hmm.
which in compensation doesn't that sound like a consolation for something that you have to sacrifice for?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this work that we do in the office, as far as it's concerned, it is a monetary transaction
Mm-hmm.
where we are expected to work in order to get money for our daily living and our security
Mm-hmm.
in future.
Mm-hmm.
It is not about our social needs. It's not about our self-esteem, which most of us has already gone past the physiological and security needs in order to get there. So, and that is reflected in the corporate policies with regards to
Mm-hmm.
HR.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, even those companies which has got lots of benefits, and people go Google. Wow, Google, fantastic. What do people think about working in Google? Well, the cafeteria, the gyms. You can bring your dogs into work and so on. You speak to the Googlers, and they will tell you, you know, these are all ploys for them to get you into the office and stay in the office longer. That's all. So these are not really benefits for you. These are productivity tools, basically, just to get you to produce more because you're a factor of production. That's one issue, one fallout. The second implication is the second impact is the way managers manage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's again focused on no longer on us as people, but we are focused on us as a factor of production.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you leave behind all the family life, everything. Your boss do not want to know about your family issues, whether you even have a family or not. Um, Maybe they may make a bit of small talk before the meeting starts. Maybe they may even meet your your spouse during the annual dinner, but they are really not interested. What happened during the pandemic is this: they cannot avoid the family. During a Zoom call, the toddler's face turned up at the screen. You cannot run away from the fact.
Mm-hmm.
People then start to notice that their work colleagues are actually just like them, trying to balance off family and life.
Mm-hmm.
And that empathy is very important in managing others. You can only empathize with someone else whom you think is like you. It's very difficult to empathize with someone who's totally different. Your boss is such a tyrant at work. It's virtually impossible to empathize with him. But when you see during a Zoom call, oh, there's a crib in a corner. There's a baby's crib. Oh, this guy who's a tyrant to us is actually a doting father. And sometimes you have to reconcile the two images. And
Mm-hmm.
it's difficult for people. For people, the manager and the manager to see each other as as individuals. And so I'm hoping that this change in the pandemic changes
Mm-hmm.
the way managers manage. To be able to see that my staff are people, they actually have a family. They've got oh, I can see in the Zoom that they are calling from the kitchen and oh so that's the way they cook. And suddenly you start thinking about oh that's the way they cook, that's the way I cook, oh we got a lot in common, you know. Hopefully it make a change. But I'm sure there will be some who will be looking at it and says, no,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go that way, that is taboo as a manager.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that a lot of the staff are not waiting for that. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of the staff, once they get the call to go back to the office, they're looking at it. Do I really want to go back to the office and endure all that pain that I'm getting from, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that manager? Most of them quit. The, the pandemic has given them time to think and reflect on how they want to be managed. And they feel underappreciated, undervalued. You know, you're not going to retain stuff like that. I mean, we have a company in Malaysia where I think they got a lot of goodwill. They
Mm-hmm.
in a recent pandemic, um, they shut down. They had a chain of
Mm-hmm.
premium burger, restaurants. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and one day they announced that they're going to shut down all their restaurants for 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
They said this is for the mental health of their staff.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, staff will stay with you if they feel that you care, if they feel that you genuinely care. All right, um, staff will pick up very fast if you're just pretending, if you're just doing it because it is part of the cost benefit analysis that you
Mm-hmm.
do. Right? I think that's a lot of the new normal. Another
Mm-hmm.
thing that we need to think about is people are re-evaluating what work is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the talking about my generation, maybe. Okay, we grew up in a time of post-war deprivation. So our values, our priorities are quite different. The younger generation, and you think about it, the millennials who grew up,
Mm-hmm.
they entered the workforce, many of them, during the 2008 financial crisis where there's no jobs,
Mm-hmm.
where they felt that the rich have really messed up their future. Okay? And you got the Gen Z now who are entering the workforce in the middle of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? These guys are looking at it and says, what future do I have when it comes to career? Okay, very low. And there is a cynicism towards um, towards the establishment. Okay, which is understandable. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if your formative years are due to all, in that kind of environment, how
Mm-hmm.
would you react? Okay, I think we need to start to appreciate not everybody is going to be working for the sake of the pay slip at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
Many people, the young people, are working for their own fulfillment today,
Mm-hmm.
not in the future, not in a different sphere, which is a
Mm-hmm.
family. It is, I mean, many of them may not even have families. Let's face it. You know,
Right.
many of the youngsters today are not going to get married, and those who get married are not going to have kids. Okay? So, talking about saving for the family, providing for the family, may not be that important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we are coached into that you got to earn money to buy a house.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these youngsters today are in
Mm-hmm.
it comes from very small families where they are very likely to be inheriting the house from their parents one day. So they don't have to worry about not having a house when they grow old.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they have got very different priorities. They don't have to chase the material goods that our generation had to. And
Yes.
so what are they chasing? They're chasing experiences. They're
Mm-hmm.
chasing about what they feel. Okay. And we need to understand that not everybody is going to be working for the sake of the money.
Mm-hmm.
People work for many different reasons. I'm always reminded of, in the 80s, when Margaret Thatcher was fighting with the coal miners, okay,
Mm-hmm.
in England. Same thing happened in America as well, where the coal mines in Pittsburgh were shutting down. And one of the things I keep noticing was that people keep saying, I'm a miner. I'm a miner. They don't say, I work in a coal mines. You see, being a miner is what they do. Sorry, being a miner is what they are, not what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And it becomes a matter of identity that I'm a miner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It is who I am. And especially in Britain, coal mining communities have developed their own culture based on, very communal self-help and brass bands and so on. It's very interesting.
Yes.
It is what they are. My work is what I am. My work isn't just what I do. And then I go home and forget about it. A lot of the young people wants to see fulfillment in what they work on.
Okay. I really appreciate, like, I mean, you brought us to really a very I would say, like, digging deep on what next normal is for you. Like, I mean, and you've only touched on, like, the people management side or people side of the next normal. And again, like, this pandemic has really brought us a lot of realization, like what you've shared with us, how important people are. And again, I've actually, like, shared this in my previous interviews as well, how, like, people or human are interconnected. I mean, you can't just, like what you've said, they're not there just to be an accountant, a miner, or whatnot, right? They are human, they are parents, they are children, right? And again, that's like a way of really, like, understanding, like, being able to value the people, appreciate them, like what you've also shared, and not only considering them as like, a factor for productivity, what like what you've mentioned. And again, that's what the silver lining of the pandemic that brought about in our life. It's more of reflecting, like what I've said in my summary, is that the next normal with the great resignation, it happened because people got the chance to reflect on what they really want in life, right? And that's also the reason why in our solutions we wanted to make it as holistic as possible, because at the end of the day, like what you've said, people are also like looking into how they can have work life balance, have flexible work schedules, and be considered as human, not as a minor or just as an accountant, right? They wanted and not to have like all those burnout. So it's about really balancing, the working with human, right, to avoid that burnout or even the mental health issues and wellness. So these are like, and that's the reason why I've been also like mentioning a lot that there's no one, or there's no one program that will be able to address all the skills or all the behavioral or soft skills requirement, because again, um there are like several things that you have to consider as human, because we're kind of complex as well, right? And this is what like the next normal has brought about. And if we were to move forward to our next question, because we've explored like what are the challenges that we are having in this next normal, in the first three questions we had. So now, if we can move into the next question, right? You've been in the corporate, or as a corporate leader in the past, and now working with corporate leaders, like CEOs, like what you've been doing in business transformation, consulting. What would you say would be the top three problems that they normally face?
That CEO's face. um,
Top three
I will just
problems of
start.
leaders, yeah, that they face.
I believe that a CEO is first and foremost a human being, a person. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to look at the top three things from a very personal point of view.
Mm-hmm.
The first of all is, and it goes back to the experience that I shared earlier on about my ex-boss.
Mm-hmm.
All CEOs have what I call a CEO hubris. All
Sorry,
project
C.
managers a hubris. Okay, all CEOs have to believe that if they don't do the job, no one's going to do it. All
Mm-hmm.
CEOs have to believe that only do they can do the best job. That's what makes a good CEO. All right, because if you're a CEO who thinks that it's all right, I will just leave it to someone else, you're
Mm-hmm.
not a CEO. The buck
Mm-hmm.
stops with you. Okay, you have to believe that if nobody's going to do it, you will be the one to do it, and
Mm-hmm.
you will jump in and do it. And that's hubris. It's a necessary part of being a CEO, and I believe a project manager as well.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, how do you balance it off?
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance it off and know what your limitations are?
Mm-hmm.
Believing that you are the one who you and only you are the only one who can lead the company, you and only you who are the only one who can transform the company. That is great, and
Mm-hmm.
that drives changes in the company that's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But do you know when to stop? Do you know the limitations of your your abilities, your knowledge, your experience? So that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing. Second thing is about empathy. All right. Do you really know the people that you lead? I hope that you're not looking at these people as factors of production, as resources, as capital.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at them as people, because it is a people that's going to be doing things for you. If they are factors of production, one day you just replace them with with a computer, with a robot, or whatever it is. That will come in quite soon, so you don't have to worry about. But
Mm-hmm.
then again, you're no longer a leader. You know, you're just a technician, basically,
Mm-hmm.
pressing buttons to get a robot to do what you want them to do. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's a technician's job. That's not a CEO's job. Okay, so a CEO is about people. Do you know the people that you have? Do you really understand what makes them tick? Or do you think there's only money that makes them tick?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what they like, what they dislike? Do you know what their aspirations are? Or do
Mm-hmm.
you merely see job titles in an org chart box?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the second point. The third point that challenges CEOs today, I mean, there are many more, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that these are the only three, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You asked me for three, and I'm just going to look at it from that person point of view. Do you, as a CEO, know what your values are, what your value sets are? And that's highly, highly important. Because if you know your values, you know what kind of decisions are going to be made.
Mm-hmm.
And you can explain those decisions to people. And really, for you to lead people, people must feel that they are following a leader who actually cares for them. This is not like in the past where people will just blindly follow somebody else. Today's youngsters wants to feel that they are part of the solution. They are
Mm-hmm.
part of the decision making. Okay, so you need to be able to explain your rationale, your decision making to people. In fact, one of the findings from some of the surveys on the Great Resignation was a recurring theme that comes out again was
Mm-hmm.
decisions are made and nobody bothers to explain to us. If you want to explain things, you have to explain the rationale behind it, and you have to explain ultimately the values that underpin those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Because things happen, you decide certain things because of your value system.
Mm-hmm.
Now you need to work out as a CEO what your values are and set it up front. Okay, as a CEO, this is how I intend to manage. And it's not nice slogans. We are way past that. It has to be, you know, value system, value sets that you can actually sit down, work through scenarios. In a scenario like this, based on these value sets, this is what I'm going to do. And you have to
Mm-hmm.
be able to accept that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's no point having nice statements, and when the scenario happens, you do something else. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you also need to sit down and say, and have the humility to accept that the value set of the company and of the leadership team may
Mm-hmm.
not be identical to mine. The team is bigger than me, even as a CEO. Okay? And one of the problems with many CEOs is the inability to separate themselves from the company.
Mm-hmm.
And what they see is that the company is them. Okay? And but the company is not them. The company is a collection of many other people under their leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So the leadership team, for instance, is the next level down from the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
The leadership team has to have its own value set as well.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the value set of the management team itself and the leadership team itself
Mm-hmm.
may differ from the values of the individual people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's the chances of a collection of people all having exactly the same values? Virtually none, right? The leadership team will have its own value, and the people may have values that differs in certain areas from that as a leadership team by itself.
Mm-hmm.
And from my observation, sometimes that conflict, that tension between the differences in the value set of the leadership team and the leaders themselves
Mm-hmm.
can be creative. It can also be disruptive.
True, true. And again, like what you've shared with us, the top problems is all about, people, the skills of a leaders. And obviously, I would say that, and that's where, like, there's company culture. But again, like more often than not, I would say that, these values, these values affects also like how the leaders do work, or like what you've said, that's where the process in terms of how they make decisions would be based on their existing values, right? And more often than not, like, even there will be differences in the values of the team members, and the leaders or the leadership team. There has to be some sort of alignment with the company values, and that's when people, I would say, would stay in the company, because there is an alignment between their values and the company values, where they're working in, right? And so, like, we've discussed about these top problems that you've shared with us, and probably we can give them a bit of solution by by sharing with them, like, what are the important leadership, having said all those problems and issues that they may face in leading a company, or leaders do face, what would be the important leadership capabilities that you must have in the next normal to continue to lead effectively, having said that?
The- To me, the first thing is you must care. Okay, you must care for the people who work for you. You
Mm-hmm.
must care for the people who will deliver for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't care for them, they will know. Then becomes pure transaction. Okay. Um, I'm not a great believer in professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, well, professionalism is a facade.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's a facade we put in front of it. Don't get me wrong, it's a necessary facade. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's necessary because, when you meet people for the first time, you don't know how to behave with them, you don't know how to relate to them. You use
Mm-hmm.
professionalism. That's necessary,
Mm-hmm.
so that there's a context in your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Professionalism is important in that context. But
Mm-hmm.
once you get to know them as a person, the
Mm-hmm.
professionalism facade has to fall away,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to relate to them as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And I always believe that at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're no longer working for your boss or your clients or your company. You're working for your friends. That's ultimately it. That's what a team is. A team to me is a group of friends. Now, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that you need to be going social together, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to be able to open up to one another,
Mm-hmm.
understand each other's vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
and be vulnerable to one another. And that is what the basis of empathy is all about.
Mm-hmm.
The leader has to have the empathy for the
Mm-hmm.
team. The leader has to be able to see and know each one of the team members as a person and not
Mm-hmm.
as job title. That's the
Mm-hmm.
very first thing.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is relating to what I mentioned just now, humility. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the humility to know that they are part of a team,
Mm-hmm.
that they are not the only one with the skills
Mm-hmm.
or to take the company forward. The hubris is there as important because it is there to catch anything that is not done. The boss will have to do it. It's as simple as that. Okay, and I've been in companies where I just basically walked out because I don't see that leadership in the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in companies where the CEO rolls up his or her sleeves to do something which a very, very junior staff would be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sometimes too much, I think, because her time, in that particular case, her time could have been best deployed doing, something else. But, she did it because she felt that it was important and that was leadership. Okay. Um, you need to have that humility to know that you are part of a team, that you're not the only one with solutions. All right. And you need to be able to um, see where people agrees with you that it is not necessarily a good thing. It could mean that there's no diversity of thinking. Okay. The third thing is very important, which is integration. Your role as a CEO, because everything in the whole company needs it at you. Okay. The HR department, the IT department, the finance department, the sales department, the marketing, the operations, everybody meets at your level. Your job is to integrate everything in. Okay. Your job is to be able to integrate all the information that comes in and make sense out of the whole thing. Either you do it or you get someone else to do it. Someone else who's got the same wavelength as you. Okay. You need to be able to integrate all the aspirations of everybody into this. Okay. You need to be able to hear all the disparate voices and comes up with a single message for everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I'm asking for is sometimes impossible. Like you need to be able to make everybody feel that that final voice that comes out is theirs. That final message that comes out is theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I realized that sometimes it's a skill to be able to pull together messages, different messages from different people, and integrate it into one single, you know, um, idea, single message, single solution. Sometimes what people say is not necessarily what they are aiming at. Sometimes what people say is merely what they think is the right solution to the fundamental problem.
Mm-hmm.
And when you understand that and you realize that sometimes when two people are coming on very strong about what they need to do, they have got the same fundamental issue that they need to resolve. And if you can come up with a solution that's resolved both, sometimes you can reconcile pretty much irreconcilable positions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The CEO has to do that, or at least has to ensure that somebody has to be able to integrate all this in for
Mm-hmm.
him or her to make a decision. There are certain things that is sometimes um, you can't avoid. There are differences that sometimes you just can't avoid. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This comes about because different people have got different risk adversity, different perceptions of where the problems are. Okay, different priorities of what they think needs to be fixed first. So at the end, it is a call from the CEO. Okay, so if you can, but I think most people, if they feel that a the gap between my position and this other manager's position who's opposing mine, if the gap can be narrowed
Mm-hmm.
in a way that we understand, okay, then it's easier to bridge. And if I feel that both of us have been listened to, okay, and there is something, there's a judgment call to be made at a level that is beyond my pay scale, then I accept that someone else will make that judgment call.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's integrating and reducing that and facilitating that communication within the team. That is
Mm-hmm.
a very important skill for the CEO.
Wow, okay. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm just summarizing what you've actually shared with us. I've actually got the last point as a communication skill, but maybe I wanted to add as well, like, the part which is important, like what you've said, is integrating or facilitating the communication. And again, like 6 out of 10 uh, leadership skills or challenge in the leadership skills is more towards communicating or communication skills, right? And again, it's all about having or taking into consideration that you're working with people, and that requires empathy, humility, and again being able to bridge, like what you've said, between people, and like having to like share or communicate it in general with the people on, like, how things are expected, and how things should be integrated, or how things should be resolved as well, and why decisions are made based on that, right? So thank you for sharing that with us. And we've talked about a lot on the role of leaders and people management in this next normal, and of course that requires transformation and learning as well, like, right? Because again, people has to stay relevant, has to continuously learn as well, right? To adapt in this current situation. So what do you believe will be the role, or is the role of learning, leadership, and transformation in able to, or in thriving in the next normal? Oops, I think you're on mute. Unmute. Let me unmute your microphone.
Sorry. Right.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, there are three different things there. There's um, learning, leadership, and transformation. And if
Yes.
I'm going to talk about all three at length, I think it probably run to tomorrow. I'm just going to focus on one. Okay,
Mhm,
learning.
mhm,
Okay, the first rule about learning in this environment that we're in now, and it's not just a pandemic. Okay, it
mhm,
is. We are in a world where things are changing very
mhm,
fast, and the pace of change is accelerating.
mhm,
Okay, uh, I mean, if you were to go back, say, in the 70s and in the 50s, 40s,
mhm,
well, yeah, there are differences, but it is, you bring somebody from the 40s and dump them in the 70s, you can
mhm,
still live quite well. You take somebody at the beginning of the century and bring them to today, they'll be lost.
mhm,
Okay, because you're talking about a world of GPS, handphones, with smartphones and so on. The pace is accelerating so fast.
mhm,
There are new technologies emerging all the time,
mhm,
and some and let's be reminded that today there are more scientists working on science projects than all of history put together until now.
wow.
Okay, so and that number of scientists working on things, and developers, and researchers and so on, that's just going to increase. So the
Mhm,
pace of change is going to be changing even more. Okay,
mhm,
the pace of change in social aspects. Just
mhm,
think about it. We've always talked about the generation gap, but really, I mean, I was just talking to a millennial who is talking about um, the differences between the millennials and the Gen Z, which to us, from in my time, were considered the same generation. All
mhm,
right, but they are already seeing differences in the two generations, and this millennial guy is hoping to be able to help Gen Z up in certain areas.
mhm.
We are in a very fluid world, and so the first rule about learning is the ability to unlearn.
Yes.
You have to be able to unlearn. You have to be able to leave behind everything that you worked on, everything that you've learned about the subject, and start again from scratch.
Mhm,
You don't have a choice about it because the world has changed. You're
mhm,
not going to be taking the old world in with you to the new world. It is like a new world every 10 years, every 5 years. You need to change paradigm every, you know, 5, 10 years. It used to be you need to change paradigm every few centuries. Now it is every few years. And that's going to be a reality. You cannot change
mhm,
paradigm if you do not unlearn, if you hang on to what you have. So the ability. to manage the ego, because at the end of the day, we don't, most of us don't want to believe that the experiences that we've accumulated, the learning that we've gone through, the effort that we have put in to acquire the knowledge and the skills are all going to be dumped and put to one side. Okay? Good is basically wasted. To a certain extent, yes. Okay. Um, but to me, it is just like expired ingredients in the kitchen. You just have to dump them. They're expired. They cannot be used. I mean, I go through my box of cables and so on. I got plenty of cables that is not usable anymore because technology
Mhm.
has moved on. I got no choice. I got to dump them. It's the same thing that you need to do every few years with the knowledge that you have. Things that is no longer relevant, you just have to dump it. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, if you don't, then at least have a humility to acknowledge that it is not.
Mhm.
I remember, and I have great respect for this one uh, manager when we were when I was in an insurance company, and it was a changing environment, very fast changing environment. And he was telling us, he's an old man, old guy, and he said, you know, this annual planning session is the most difficult that I've come across. I don't think I can follow with you guys.
Mhm.
What I'm going to do is you guys will have to move forward without me. I will stay and defend the turf, all right, because this is our cash cow. And then you guys will have to go ahead and build the future. Now, there's a man with humility, acknowledging that, you know, he's not going to be able to acquire the skills to move forward, but he
Mhm.
still has a role in the company. Okay. So even if you're not able to unlearn, you have to acknowledge that you are not, and don't stand in the way of those who wants to unlearn and learn acquire new skills.
Yes. And that's really important in these times where, like what you've said, the pace of changes is accelerating, new technologies emerging. We need to learn, unlearn, reskill, upskill, whatever you want to call it, but continuous learning will be really one of the key things that you have to do, or your organizations has to look into, to be able to adapt or stay relevant or to thrive in this next normal, obviously, right? And thank you for sharing that. And let's move on to the last two questions, because I'm curious to know, you've shared a lot about leadership, humility, and how people management is important, right? In any generation, in fact, I would say, like, especially in this interesting situation we are in right now. So I just wonder, if you have a magic wand and can use it, what will you do with it?
Um, I would like us all to have a sort of telepathic,
Wow.
telepathic at the heart level. Okay, I'm not talking about just reading minds. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the thing about reading minds is this: if all of us have the ability to read minds, there's a very interesting outcome. There is this movie with Ricky Gervais, recommended highly. It is the title is The Invention of Lying.
Mm-hmm.
It is about a world where there was nobody, there's no lies. Everybody tells the truth all
Mm-hmm.
the time. Okay, and Ricky Gervais is a guy who suddenly woke up one day and he was the only person with the ability to tell a lie in the whole world. Okay,
Wow.
it's
Okay.
a it's a very interesting insight into lying, and you realize that, you know, everything in our world is based on a lie. We lie all the time. Okay, and the reason why we do that is because we don't have enough trust of one another. We
Mm-hmm.
feel that we've got something to defend. If I have a magic wand, I would like to throw that all open so that there's nobody who needs to have any fear about anything. Because what is there to fear when everyone else knows exactly what you think and what you feel? There's nothing to hide.
True.
Okay. And as a result, we then our communication becomes perfect. Okay, we don't keep things away because we have um, our communication becomes does not becomes imperfect anymore because we are hiding things away because we have fears, right? And the lack of communication is actually what causes all the problems of the world today.
Yes. I totally agree with you on that because a lot of the problems, a lot of the challenges, even in relationships, right, or wherever we are, even in offices, like a lot of the issues actually comes out because of the communications or lack of it. In fact, and again, like what you've said, having this telepathic um ability is really like to increase that trust, that honesty in our heart, so that we can actually like communicate in a most in the most effective way, I would say, right? Wow, that's really a great uh like ability, like wow. I hope you have a magic one then. But I mean, like with what you do right now in, business transformation consulting, and we've had amazing conversation as well in lunch club last time, right? So again, like, building this relationship and constantly communicating and learning from everyone is really something that would be key for everyone, for us to stay connected, to stay to be able to communicate better, like in especially for our children, right? Yeah. So okay, thank you so much for that. And so that leads me to my last question as well. This is a very interesting question. If you were to ask yourself that you can best answer, what would it be?
I have to admit, this is the one question that I'm a bit lost with answering. Okay, so I really don't know because there's so many things that is of interest to me
Mm-hmm.
in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I guess I just have to go back into myself and really, you know, the question is what is most important for me in my life today?
And why did you choose that? What is, let me just repeat that and type that in. What is important to me today?
Yeah, in my life. Why do I choose that question? Because that's what about who I am today.
Mm-hmm. And like you've mentioned that this is one of the most difficult question I've asked to you, right? And if
Yeah,
you were to answer that question, what is important for you for you today in your life, what would be your answer?
my wife and daughter.
Wow, that's beautiful. You have a lucky wife and daughter in that case, to be able to like give all your time, your effort, and share with us, to every one of us here in the audience as well, that asking yourself what is important for you. And again, I mean, I think it will be common to most of us, and that's the reason why you chose to like focus on people, right, and human in our discussion throughout this, because at the end of the day, we have our family, we have people that matters to us, right? And we do all our best to actually um have that fulfilled, I would say, or have that conversation, have that interventions, or like have that time simply to really make the most out of it, right? With the people that matters most. Thank you so much for sharing with that question with us. And it's an important question we should
Mm.
everyone should ask themselves, right?
Yes.
And before we end our interview, I just wanted to find out with you if you do have like any additional message that you'd like to share with our audience before we end this.
I think in this world today, and especially with the pandemic, I think it's important for all of us to just reach out and see people on the other side, whether or not the other side is the other side of the corporate table, the
Mm-hmm.
other side of of the transaction counter, the other
Mm-hmm.
side of a political divide,
Mm-hmm.
the other side of the social dispute. I think it's important to see the other side as people
Mm-hmm.
and really, we have to be able to see the other side as nothing more than a reflection of ourselves.
Yes. Thank you. That's a beautiful message. And I really appreciate this very people oriented or people centric conversation with you. And at the same time, very, I mean, full of humility, I would say. And again, I also would like to thank everyone who's watching us or will watch us later on. And do join us in this journey to fight the pandemic that has caused challenges to quite a number of people. And let's all turn this to an opportunity, instead of a challenge, right? It's at the end of the day, it's all about how you respond to the current situation, and it's all about the mindset. So join us in the several interventions that we run, and remember that even the richest investors in the world say that investing in yourself is the best investment that you can ever make in your life. And with that, I'd like to leave you with this quote from Dolly Parton. If your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you so much for our to our audience. And do visit our gallery. I've actually put our website as well. Do visit us if you wanted, to see all these resources, because a lot of times people do miss out the interview. So we have a compilation of all our interviews. Visit our gallery where you can actually like sign up to subscribe or to access those all the recordings that we have from all the interviews that we had and the webinars that we've run to help leaders to stay relevant in this difficult situation. So thank you so much, Jim, and stay safe, everyone. Bye for now.
Right. Hi, thanks.